Before we start a unit on polynomials, first it's really important to go through and look at some basic definitions that we're going to use every single day. So the first definition we're going to look at is standard form. And the standard form of a polynomial is when the terms are listed from largest to smallest exponent. It's just a standard way that we can write these out so that everybody's on the same page. Largest to smallest exponent. It's how we would probably naturally write them. Second definition is degree. We're just going to call the degree of the polynomial the largest exponent. This is just a way that we can go through and classify the polynomials so we can know what we're talking about. So degree is largest exponent. Leading coefficient. The leading coefficient is going to be the coefficient of the first term once it's already been put in standard form. And that leading coefficient is going to be really important for us because it's going to give us a lot of information as we go throughout the unit. Lastly, we have the constant term. And the constant term is going to just be the term with no variable. Now that one's pretty easy to pick out. It's going to be at the end of my polynomial. So there are four terms that we're going to use a lot. So let's look at example 1. We're going to find the standard form, the degree, the leading coefficient, and constant term of the following polynomial. So if I'm going to put it in standard form, I have to recognize first that there's my largest exponent. So he goes first, 2x to the third, done with him, and then just keep working your way down with a positive 5x squared, a negative 8x, and a positive 3. And that gets it all put into standard form. Now I can just identify my information. My degree is right there. So it's going to be a degree 3 polynomial. The leading coefficient is right there. It's a positive 2. And my constant term is right here. He's going to be a positive 3. Again, that's just all information that is good to be able to identify. The rest of the terms, it's not that they don't matter, but for us right now, they're not going to tell us much information. In example 2, it says without foiling. So in other words, I'm not going to be distributing anything. I still want to tell what this information is. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. If I want to find the degree, I have to realize that when I FOIL, the first thing I would do is to multiply those two, the 5x and the 3x squared. And that would get me a 15x to the third. And nowhere else in that entire problem am I going to get an x to the third or anything higher. So right here is what's going to be my leading term. It's going to be the first part of my standard form. Because again, I'm not going to get any larger exponents. Well, from that leading term, I can go ahead and I can identify my degree, which is going to be 3, and I can identify my leading coefficient, which is going to be 15. Lastly, for the constant is the term that has no variable. So I just take my number times my number, which would be the last thing I would do if I were to FOIL, and that would give me a positive 4 for my constant term. One more example, example 3. If I'm going to go through without foiling and I have 3 pieces, then I just have to look a little more carefully and realize to get the degree, it's going to be the x's times the x's times the x's. At some point I would multiply all 3 of those together when I was foiling. So if I look carefully, I'm going to have a 2x to the third as my leading term. Nowhere else in my entire foiling process would I get anything larger than an x to the third, or would I get another x to the third term. So that tells me a degree is 3, and it tells me my leading coefficient is 2. So the last thing I want to do then is pick off the constant term, which again is going to be number times number, or in this case, number times number times number. This would be the last thing I would do at one part. So I take negative 4 times 1 times negative 5, and I get a positive 20. So that's how I look at a binomial times a binomial times a binomial without foiling it out. So we're going to use these terms a lot as we go throughout the unit. Standard form, degree, leading coefficient, and constant term. So get comfortable with them, try out the problems on the back of the page, and we'll look at those once we get to class.